Hello, hello. Welcome to Recruiting Live. My name is Katrina Kibben, not Ryan Leary. I swear I'll fix that at some point. And for those of you who are just joining Recruiting Live for the first time, I want you to know that you should not expect to see any slides. You should not expect to, need to take vigorous notes. This is about listening and conversation. And the best part, I think, is that I'm really excited today, if you can't tell, because one of my favorite people is on the line and somebody who has taught me a lot about conversations with candidates and why old skill actually still works. Maureen Sharib. She is a expert phone sourcer, and I'll let you do your introduction and a little bit about your background. And let's also talk about your background of that phone, but talk about you first.
Talk about my background in phone sourcing or the telephone.
Start with phone sourcing, and then we'll talk about the phone.
Well, I'm a telephone sourcer. I've been doing this about 20 years, and I call into companies and I find people who hold specific titles that do specific functions, and that's my thing. I've been writing about it for a long time. Some of you may know me by my writing, and that's why I'm here today, to answer your questions about phone sourcing.
Exactly, and I hope you guys will not hesitate to ask questions as we're talking through things. And a little history on the phone. That's a pretty historic phone, isn't it? Did you say it's from the 20s?
Well, it's pre-World War II, and I have a collection of phones. This is one of them. And I bought this particular phone at Goodwill on a 50% off day. If here in Ohio, or here in Cincinnati on Sundays, we have 50% off day at Goodwill, so I'm sure to go. And this particular one was 20 bucks, so I got it for $10. And the history books tell me that it's pre-World War II. And I put a blurb up on Sources Unleashed about it today, which I did not copy to tell you about it now. But if you want to learn about it, go to Sources Unleashed.
Yeah. It's a really unique model for a phone, and I think the fact that you collect phones, and the reason I brought it up is because I think the fact that you collect phones is just another thing that reminds me of how passionate you are about phone sourcing. And I think phone sourcing gets a little bit of a bad rap. Like when you bring up why didn't you just call them? I think there's definitely like a digital divide between groups. Yeah. And there's one group of people who know you have to get on the phone. They will not negotiate with you about this. You have to. And then there's this other group who always have the same argument, or at least the ones that I talk to. And they say, well, when I call, they say, well, how did you find my number? Or like, what do I say? And so you're the expert. What do you say when people go, how did you find me?
Many times when you call someone on the telephone, now you're talking about that second stage of after we've identified an organization within a company, we're asked many times to organizationally chart companies. In other words, we'll go in and we'll chart the marketing department, or we'll chart the entire research and development department, or whatever. And then sometimes our customers will ask us to contact each one of those persons on a first touch basis and offer the opportunity and gauge the level of interest. So we'll call each person, and for instance, I'll say, hi, this is Maureen Sharib. I'm calling you on behalf of, but I might say, hi, this is Maureen Sharib. You don't know me. And that's usually how I'll open the door. The person will say something to the effect of, sometimes, they'll say something to the effect of, I'm not looking for a job, or how'd you get my name? And I just tell them. I tell them that I called the company and asked who you are. And that goes a long way in settling their concern as to how I got their name. People think sometimes that somebody in the company wants to...
It makes sense the phone would ring while we're on, right?
They think somebody in the company wants to get rid of them. You know, they go to that stinking thinking place. Who knows what they think? But I just tell them the truth. I called and asked after you. My customer interested in knowing who does what inside your company. Your company is one that they admire. And they go, oh, okay. And that's enough to settle them
Yeah.
down on an answer to their question.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It seems so common sense, and I think people stumble over like, what do I do if someone asks me a question? I don't know, be honest. Like, why is
Yeah,
that so crazy?
just
Yeah,
tell the truth.
right? You sent me a little like breakdown of a dialogue between two people. Like they call and they're like, "Well, how did you find me?" And he said, "Okay, I want you to pull up a browser and search for and walk me through that because I know everyone else hasn't already seen that." So,
That was an article I just wrote, I think, about a search.
yeah.
Um, that was help me out a little bit. It was a
Yeah,
script,
you
wasn't
were
it?
basically teaching him how he found you. Like, okay, do this. And then he started to realize, like, oh, there are a lot of people like
Oh, okay. So I was looking for an operations person, I think, a logistics person. And I called into a company a Sunday evening. Didn't have anything to do. So what do? I get on the phone and I source. So I'm calling into a company that's running a second shift. And I hit somebody who's working a line on a shop floor. I'm calling onto a floor.
yeah.
And the guy answers the phone. I rang 10, 12 times, and he answers the phone. And I said, do you have a logistics such and such manager? Is there a logistics manager? I know there's no logistics manager there on a Sunday night. And of course, I know he's going to say no. And I say, well, who is that person? He tells me the person's name. And I want to know who else is in that logistics department. And so I said to him, do you have access to a computer? And he said, yeah, well, actually, I'm on it right now. And I said, oh, you are? Can you plug in logistics, the word logistics, into it? I asked very simple questions, and I asked one at a time, one question at a time. And he said, yeah. He spoke with an accent, and he said, how do you spell that? And I spelled it for him. This is what you're talking about, right, Katrina?
Yes, exactly.
I spelled it for him, Logistics. And he plugged it in, and I could hear him talking to himself, looking, at the results. And he said, I'm trying to recall, and he said, there's something in Waukesha, I think it was, or Wisconsin somewhere, and blah 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 blah. And sure enough, he pulled up the logistics department for that company and gave me the location or the logistics department for that company. So my point was you can call into a company and get some schmo working on the assembly line who has access to the company's directory, and just with a simple, do you have access to the directory? Yes. Right. And ask them a simple question like, can you do this? Give them a suggestion. Boom. They can help you.
Exactly. And I think reality is that not everyone's on LinkedIn. And so when you dial into those company directories, you're cracking that wide open. I think
Right.
when you think LinkedIn is the end of the answer, you are completely wrong.
Yeah, out of that logistics department, one, maybe two might have been on LinkedIn. There were probably 12, 13 names out of that department in that company. Yeah. So,
Tom Bolt just chimed in. So, Maureen, what was Alexander Graham Bell really like? He's pulling your chain. I had to. I was like, it's too good. Too good. He's shouting your praises over here too. He said, the first time he met you, you left the room absolutely stunned. And you continue to do that because I think you're taking where everyone else is trying to take mediums, and we talked about this a little bit when we were doing our pre-call, that everyone's trying to take mediums that have traditionally been one-way mediums. My example is Twitter, Facebook, right? You post a status. It's not a conversation piece. And they're trying to use those for recruiting. And like the people who didn't grow up with Twitter and Facebook, and yes, I'm one of them. Don't try to tell me I'm too young to know, but I am. I'm old enough to know that two-way conversation is where we make recruiting relationships.
Right.
So what would you say to someone who's like, I can do it all online?
No, you can't.
Just no.
No, just no.
Well, because I think there are fundamental issues along the entire recruiting cycle when you decide that you are going to connect with someone on a one-way channel.
That's
So
right.
it starts with not being able to find them. Um,
Right.
right?
Huge part not being able to find them.
Yeah.
People who believe that just have no idea how much they can't find, how much they're missing.
Exactly. And then we move on to the conversation element and actually getting to know someone, I feel like the voice means a lot. So tell me a little bit, because you're constantly talking to people, tell me what voice teaches you.
The voice, the other person's voice, well, you know, when you speak with someone, immediately you hear that level of interest that you don't get online. There's no way. There's just no way you can hear that or interpret that in an email or an in-mail. The lilt, the hesitation, the pause, the tone.
Yeah.
What's
The
that?
evolving consideration.
I'm sorry?
I found that when I talk to somebody about a role, I can hear evolving consideration. So
Yes, yes.
where I'm, where we're talking, let's say we're Skyping or we're, sending a Facebook chat. I'm asking questions and they're answering them, and I'm not getting, like you said, I'm not getting inflection. I'm not kind of getting signs of interest. The, non-verbal, like not non, sorry, it is very verbal. It's the tonality, I guess. And when someone's interested in real life, let's say we were having coffee, right? And I hate to go to the dating metaphor, but I'm totally going to. So you see that like somebody's leaning in, their arms aren't crossed, they're smiling. You can get some of those indicators even without seeing someone if you're on the phone.
That's right. That's right.
So how do you coach people on phone sourcing when they're weary about it?
When they're weary or wary, two different things, and people are both of those things.
Give me both.
Okay. Wary. I can hear that in their approach. I get a lot of managers that call me and say, I have a team and I want you to teach them the phone source. And I go, really? Tell me about your team. Well, they're young and they need to get on the phone. I go, yeah, they do, but do they want to? Well, no. Well, I can teach them the phone source till the cows come home, but when you're not looking, they're not going to. Oh, they'd better. Well, they're not going to.
Trying to lead with the iron fist, right?
Exactly. And I tell them, if you have 10 and that you try to force this onto them, it's just not going to take. They have to, it's a culture. We just have to erase the thinking that the phone is the enemy.
Yes.
This is for more than texting and sending pictures and everything but talking.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to do that. Maybe put this, on their desks, and this is use. Okay. That's my recommendation.
Exactly. And
My recommendation.
I think something that I've run into just trying to tell people, like, why don't you just give them a call? They say, well, they don't want to talk to me on the phone.
Are you nuts? Yeah. I hear from people all the time. Oh, I'm so glad you called me. Nobody calls me.
Yes, nobody calls anymore. I've heard that one a lot.
No. I hear that from managers too, that my team's not calling people. Oh, no, they're not. I understand that.
Yeah.
But
Well, and I think the other part of it is there was a time when people got a lot of phone calls and email was the nuanced approach, right? So email stood out because it was one of 10 and
right,
phone was one of 100 and it didn't have as much power. And now, because of the obvious, I mean, we all have inboxes that have exploded before, right?
right.
And so now, because email is 100 to 100, I mean, you're getting all of the email. Phone is the one. It's the thing that stands out.
Right. But the thing about phone is once they do it, once we do the training, they have fun doing it. We make it fun. And they do enjoy it. And they do take to it.
Yeah.
And some of them do like it. And if it's done right, if the training is done right and they invest in it and they do it over time, it does take. And they do start using the phone more. And they do enjoy it. So it works. The phone works. It's a powerful, powerful medium.
Totally. And Levy just chimed in. He says, they grew up with the electronic device as a combo security blanket and entertainment device in place of conversation. He's like, no wonder they don't want to use it. There was never any kind of training.
Right. And they got all their feel goods from that electronic buzz. Right.
Exactly.
All those endorphins came from that electronic buzz.
Right? They get their kicks out of likes. Like, and like, I would expect to, have a conversation, actually, get to enjoy someone. Audra Knight, thank you so much for being here, Audra. She said, you can't do emojis on the phone, right? You have to get it from their inflection. You get that, like, energy from them.
Right. But the phone is really energizing. You get on the phone and you spend an hour or so, it's like, you buzz.
Yeah.
Just get started on the phone. Make yourself get started. You'll feel fine doing it.
Exactly. I mean, I definitely had to learn a little bit of that because I think one area where people tell me they get caught up is, well, I don't know what to say. What if, what if, what if?
On
How do
the
you
phone,
coach conversationalism? Is it conversationalism? How do you coach conversational tone, I guess?
conversational tone. Well, when you call someone, a lot of, there's been conversation in the groups lately about this. What do you say on a phone call? Do you call and say, hi, how are you today? Or do you not say that? Some people
Yeah.
say, what's wrong with it? Some people say, oh, no, don't do that. It depends on the individual. What are you comfortable with? What kind of results do you have with that? Personally, I don't. I call and say, hi, this is Maureen. You don't know me. And I get good results with that. Sometimes there's a stunned silence on the other end. The guy go, no, I don't. And I take it from there. It's a good icebreaker. And then I go into my thing, and it works for me. Some people
Yeah.
might be entirely uncomfortable with that. But it's what works for you. And it's just a matter of listening. A good conversationalist is a good listener. I know everyone's heard that, but it's true. A good conversationalist is a good listener. And think of a telephone call as a knock on your door. You're knocking on someone's door. Very few people have done that in life, knock on persons' doors. I don't know how many Girl Scouts we have listening, but Girl Scouts, did you ever sell cookies door to door?
I did.
Did you? Was
Yeah.
that an easy thing to do? Was that
Not at
easy?
first.
Not
I
at
mean,
first.
I was scared. Like I was one of those kids. I was a little shy. I know this is hard to believe. I was a little shy, and so I would get nervous at trick or treating, even though that's the context. You knock, they give you candy, right? But to
Okay.
go up and say, buy something from me.
Right. Okay. But let's go to trick-or-treating. You know, trick-or-treating even today, kids don't trick-or-treat. Like, not like when we were kids. I mean, we used to run around like crazy people. We could, right?
Yeah,
Today, you go to a parking lot and you go from car to car to car. And this business about, danger stranger, stranger danger, what is it? I mean, come on. These kids today are think about it. We have sort kind of, we have ourselves to blame that, strangers are danger. Oh, don't talk to strangers. I mean, we have this society that you don't call people, you don't ask for information. It's weird. It's really weird. And in some respects, I understand where they're coming from.
right.
And oh, you don't call and you don't ask for information, privacy. You're not supposed to call and ask for information. I'm like, forget that. I call and ask for people's social security numbers. For goodness, not really, but
Like if I need it, that's all the bills.
pay me enough money. Huh?
Right. We definitely have a few fellow Girl Scouts online, Melanie.
Nothing. So you knocked on doors. You got a reward.
Exactly.
Think about
Exactly.
it. You're knocking on a door.
Yeah. And so we have a ton of questions and comments coming in. So I'm just going to read through those and we'll talk through it. So Tom says, most of the new generation recruiters don't know that you can actually talk to someone on the phone unless they're playing Pokemon. Like, I think, honestly, I think they convince themselves no one answers, no one likes the phone. And they like repeat these mantras that are not true.
I think they do too. I think they want to believe it, and they tell each
Exactly.
other, and they tell their managers that,
Right?
and some of their managers are believing it too.
Yeah. And they let them choose not to.
I think so. I think
Yeah,
so. I think it's dangerous.
exactly. It really is. And so, Animal, thank you for being here. Since I am hosting one of your co-hosts and frequent guests, he says, a good conversationalist is someone who has something interesting to say. So you have to have something that's worthwhile to them.
And I go at loggerheads all the time about these things. He thinks you have to have something to say all the time. I say you just have to sit and listen. God knows I sit and listen to him plenty.
I enjoy listening to him. I think
He always has something interesting to say. I'll say that for him.
absolutely. I would say that I'm with you. Conversationalist has to be a great storyteller, but it has to be a storyteller that resonates or is relevant, right? It needs to be something that brings it out in them, or you're not going to be able to start a great conversation or something that digs deep.
Mhm. I would agree. I would agree.
Um, so Tom Bolt has a question. He said, telephone sourcing with a ruse makes it sound like you're Rachel from Cardholder Services. Um, and people are more skeptical if you aren't honest. That I don't know where the question is in this, Tom, but but I think you're right. So when people call and they go, "How are you?" The first thing they say, "Hi, this is Katrina. How are you?" I don't know you, Katrina. Like, and that's why I think I like your approach so much on the I don't know you
Mhm.
because it's more honest.
Yeah, I don't care for the hi Katrina, how are you doing today? I don't like that because if you're a receptionist, gatekeeper, I don't give a rat's ass about how you are today. I mean, you get a thousand calls, 500 calls a day. What are you going to answer that question? 500? No, it's going to irritate you. So it's
Exactly.
not out of you. So no, I don't waste your time like that. But again, it depends on how many calls you're making a day. I don't recommend it. If you're if you're doing what I'm doing, I don't recommend it.
Yeah.
I think you're going
Um,
to a lot of gatekeepers.
and Levy made a great point. He said, phone roosing is no different than the in-malling, When when you send the same templated email to 500 people and expect that you're gonna get, it's an attack on the senses almost, right? Like you you're not actually appealing to their sense of communication and ego. That was something else that we talked about briefly um, before the call, before we went live. We were just catching up, and we talked about appealing to their ego. So being able to say like, I know a lot about you, or I've heard you're the best. How do you use ego to start a great conversation?
How do I use ego to start a conversation? I don't really pander to ego other than to say, if they say, how did you get my name? I tell them the truth. I say, I called and asked. The company I'm working for admires the company you work for and asked me to find out who does your job. So I asked specifically after who you were. So in that sense, I'm kind of pandering to their ego, and they go, oh, they don't do that, but that's what I think they think. So yeah, if that's
Exactly.
pandering to their ego,
Yeah.
that's how I do it.
So
So
Melanie just chimed in about, when you get someone on the phone, and actually I heard this on Animal Show a few weeks ago from Jerry, and how Jerry described it. I've actually mentioned this 2 weeks in a row now because I thought it was so spot on. He's like, if you're an asshole, or they think you're an asshole. Do you remember that? Yeah. And so Melanie just said basically the same thing. Like, from the time I get them on the phone, I can tell from how they act if they're interested or not, where they're at. Like,
there you go. There's the voice thing again.
exactly. If they're in a blow off mode, then no way. Yet if they're not, then I will, then we'll talk. And most times they respond. And she said, I get them to tell me so much. So
Mhm.
much more than you probably would ever get from the email, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think
Exactly.
you can get fooled in email much more so than on the phone.
Yes. Um, and Sue, fantastic point. She said, when you do that too, they don't have time to think about what they're going to say. So they
No.
usually tell you what you want to know and what they actually think.
Right. You get more information. You don't get an edited version. Mhm.
Exactly.
Right.
So our time just flew by. It is 12:28, but we have one more question I really want to answer. From Tatiana. Thank you so much for joining. She said, do you ask people if it's a good time to talk?
No, I don't. Now, if I hear reticence or hesitation, I'll say, this sounds like it may not be a good time to talk. Is there another time I can call you? I don't let the call get away from me. I don't let them say, I'll call you back, because they won't. I get their
Yep.
number and I call them back at an appointed time. But it has to be really uncomfortable sounding on their end for me to do that.
Yeah, because that's such an easy out, right?
Yeah.
Like, is this a good time to talk? No. Okay, bye.
No. No, if you answer the phone, if they answer the phone, they can talk.
That's bad conversational behavior. You're not starting a conversation. You're literally ending it.
Yeah, you're
And on
looking to
that,
get phone yourself when you do that.
Maureen, you have to come back. This is not your only appearance on this show. You're stuck with me.
Too. I'm
We have so
real.
many questions coming in that I haven't even been able to address. Um, Tons of people here saying, they just really loved this and really love all of the advice on phone sourcing. So we're definitely gonna have to do more of this. Definitely get that article edited and posted. Um,
Okay.
and I'm
Thanks for
looking.
having me. I'm delighted to be asked.
Yes, you're one of the best. I say that with all sincerity. So thank you. It's my pleasure. So for anyone who's still on the line, which it looks like most of you are, next week I'm going on vacation. So we are not having an event. But stay tuned for the next event, which I cannot even remember who's on right now. It's been a long week. But because you've subscribed to Recruiting Live before, you're automatically subscribed to all the Recruiting Live events. So you'll be getting them weekly. You can decide to attend or not. I do that because I know you're busy and you're not keeping track of like what's happening or looking at Facebook all the time. So just want to make sure that you check that out. we'll be here. A ton of applause still coming in. Maureen, thank you.
Can I plug an event?
Please, please.
On August 4th, I'm going to be in Australia at the Sourcing Summit.
Yes.
And on August 9th, I'm going to be in New Zealand at Sourcing Summit New Zealand. And Shelley's going to be with me at both events. So if you're in Australia, Sydney, or Australia or New Zealand, please come.
Yes, you absolutely should. I'm really jealous. We're gonna have to meet up at one of these events eventually. All right. Well, everyone, I will see you in 2 weeks. Same time, same place. Have a good one.
Bye.